Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. We're going to deal with two groundbreaking comedians tonight who sort of went over their skis, but before we do, we're going to start out with Barbara Cook, the opera soprano, Broadway and cabaret star who died recently at the age of 89. Listeners know how much I know about opera, so I'm going to turn it over to Kate Silverton of the BBC4 Last Word to talk about Barbara Cook.
Barbara Cook was one of the original ingenues of the golden age of Broadway. Her silky soprano voice, rousing songs and romantic ballads ensured she left an indelible stamp on some of musical theatre's most notable characters. David Benedict, journalist and theatre critic, pays tribute to a true American diva.
You make me feel so young. You make me feel so spring is sprung.
Barbara Cook was this extraordinary figure because she was still singing. Most singers stop around 70, 71. Barbara Cook kept going. Barbara Cook did a concert at Lincoln Center in 2015 when she was 87. She went to New York. She got work in singing clubs.
I started out as a pony. That's what they used to call the dancing girls as opposed to the showgirls. I was too short to be a showgirl.
Leonard Bernstein wrote a musical called Candide.
And here I am, my heart breaking, forced to glitter, forced to be gay.
He had written this extraordinary coloratura aria called Glitter and Be Gay, which became one of her showstoppers.
Glitter and be gay, that's the part I play. Here I am in Paris, France.
Classical sopranos, very, very high sopranos, will go up to a top E flat, and that's what she did. But if you sing one of those roles as classical soprano, you do 2 or maybe 3 performances a week. She was singing Glitter and Be Gay, which has countless top E flats 8 times a week. So there's this extraordinary resilience in her voice, but it's also a very, very pure sound, and you hear every single lyric. She wasn't one of those singers that sort of cheats vowels because it's easier to sing.
Born to higher things, would I droop my wings?
In later years, she became one of the foremost interpreters of Stephen Sondheim, and he absolutely loved what she did.
The sun comes up, I think about you. The coffee cup, I think about you. I want you so, it's like I'm losing my mind.
I think her association with Stephen Sondheim was very, very important to her. A song that's often sung overblown because the title is Losing My Mind. People go, oh, it's a song about emotional breakdown, and by the end of the song they're screaming and tearing the walls down.
Said you loved me, or were you just being kind? Or am I losing my
We're going to move on to the first of our comedians, Dick Gregory, who died recently at the age of 84. Dick Gregory was a nice African-American boy. He was born in St. Louis. He went to Southern Illinois. He was a track star there. And then in the mid-50s, he moved up to Chicago to do stand-up comedy. By the early 1960s, a lot of stand-up comedy was topical, as typified by Lenny Bruce and Mort Saul. And Dick Gregory was one of the first black topical comedians. He caught his big break when Hugh Hefner heard him one day. He needed to stand in for Professor Irwin Corey, whose podcast we've done, and also a lefty. So Dick Gregory got his first big-time gig at the Playboy Club, the Carousel Club, for Hugh Hefner, in the middle of a blizzard in front of a white Southern audience, and he scored big. From there, he went on to the Jack Paar Show. Here are a couple of his jokes that he told at the Hungry Eye.
I hate to see any baseball player having trouble, but that's a great sport for my people. That is the only sport in the world where a Negro can shake a stick at a white man and won't start no riot. And you heard what Bobby Kennedy said about 8 weeks ago. He said 30 years from this year, a Negro can become president. So treat me right, I'll get in there and raise taxes on you.
I realized that if I made people laugh, they would stop talking about me. So that's what I set out to do.
From there, he got involved in the civil rights issues in the March on Washington in 1963, and he became sort of a civil rights and leftist avatar from then on. Here he talks about the Watts riots in 1965, the first major race riot of the 1960s.
22 million people, be they black or white, start hollering police brutality, then it's time to start listening to 22 million people and going in. A lot of people say, well, it's not police brutality. Police brutality is not when a cop necessarily knocks me upside the head. It's when a cop calls me nigger when he's making the arrest. It's when he handles me wrongly and processing the arrest. This is a form of police brutality. And there's so few people that seem to understand that when the Negro says it's police brutality, then you say, well, he's just looking for a way out. Well, how do these many people look for a way out in so many areas in America? It's like Billy Graham, I think, made the statement of statements when he came into L.A., and he said he thought the communists was behind the riot. And there's just not enough communists in Russia to stand on every corner in a Negro ghetto waiting for a cop to arrest a Negro and start a riot.
He sounds pretty good there, but he started going a little overboard. He ran for mayor of Chicago against Richard J. Daley. He didn't do too well. He ran for president in 1968. Didn't do too well. While all the obituaries talk about how he's a spokesman for the left, they sort of ignored where he went after that, to conspiracy land. He was on Geraldo in 1975. The night they first aired the Zapruder film. And then he went conspiracy theory mad. JFK assassination, Martin Luther King assassination, moon landing was fake, 9/11 was an inside job, and the government was intentionally contaminating the inner city with lead and manganese. On top of that, he got into fad diets and alternative medicine. I guess if you're a left-winger, you like Dick Gregory, but he was a little too out there for my tastes. Well, another comedian who was a little too out there for my tastes was our feature tonight, Joseph Levitch, a.k.a. Jerry Lewis, who died recently at the age of 91. Nice Jewish boy from Newark. For a little while, he was one of the biggest stars in the world, but I gotta tell you, I never found him funny. Here is Al Jazeera reports on Jerry Lewis.
They became the perfect showbiz combination, the smooth, cool Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis with his goofy, manic style of comedy.
And now the Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis Show!
In the 1940s and 50s, they appeared in nightclubs, on television, and made 16 movies, becoming famous around the world.
You're the one for me, hey!
But by 1956, after 10 years together, they fell out, and their comic combination came to an end. Jerry Lewis was only just beginning, though, and his solo career took off. He agreed to a deal with Paramount Studios, which at the time was the largest film contract ever signed. He acted, wrote, produced, and directed 14 movies in 7 years, but one was his clear favorite.
Nutty Professor, nothing compares to it. The best work I've ever done.
For decades, Lewis hosted an annual telethon that's thought to have raised as much as $2 billion for muscular dystrophy. And in 1995, he fulfilled a lifelong ambition of appearing on Broadway in a revival of the comedy Damn Yankees. Jerry Lewis kept busy throughout his working life. His one motivation was to make people laugh.
Laughter is our safety valve. Most important device is to laugh.
Let's talk about a couple of those things. Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. Martin and Lewis, the most popular comedy team in America after World War II. People were getting tired of Abbott and Costello. In fact, they were the most popular act in America. If you look at newsreels of 1955, them hanging out the window of the Paramount Theater, you see crowds bigger than those of the Beatles in 1964.
Martin and Lewis even invite their fans upstairs, says Jerry.
I tell you what, you want to come up before me? We ain't got any.
Broadway's laugh invasion goes on and on without benefit of scenario, until the firm hand of New York's finest reaches out to write an abrupt beta.
And they made some very popular, not great movies. Here's a clip of them.
We're having loads of fun. Won't you join us? Use Ajax, the foaming cleanser. Blows the dirt right down the drain.
Is that right, Dad?
Yes, that is. You said it superbly. There's no question about that in my mind.
Bob Hope mentioned Ohio, where he's from. I'm from Ohio myself, Steubenville. So,
say hello to all the guys in Steubenville.
Dum-Dum, Apehead, all you fellas, send in that money.
Say hello to Ruzai.
Ruzai and Mandy and Mindy, send in that loot.
And I'm from Newark, and I'd like to say hello to my friends Hessie, Morty, Harvey, Myron, All you cats in Newark.
They broke up in 1956. Jerry Lewis was sort of a control freak and called the shots, and Dean Martin felt he was getting the short shrift, so they went their separate ways until they were reunited with Jerry's Telethon 20 years later by none other than Frank Sinatra.
I have a friend who loves what you do every year and who just wanted to come out and say, would you send my friend out, please? Where is he? Will you send him out here? Come here. What is this here? Break it up. I think it's about time, don't you?
And thank you.
Yeah. Hurry up, folks.
I don't know.
Ivan.
You know, it seems like we haven't seen each other for 20 years.
Well, you know, there was all those rumors about our breaking up, and then when I started the show and you weren't here, I believed it.
In the interim, Jerry Lewis was a big star, not quite as big as he'd been with Martin and Lewis. There was no middle ground on his movies. You either loved him or you hated him. His classic is, as he mentioned, The Nutty Professor. That's sort of a take on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, with Jerry Lewis playing Professor Kelp, the nutty professor, and his alter ego buddy Love, the lounge lizard. Here's a little bit of Professor Kelp in the dean's office.
I think it had something to do with an additive to gasoline for the purpose of increasing the efficiency of the combustion engine, right?
Yes, it was something to that effect, Dr. Warfield.
Do you happen to recall what that additive was?
Yes, as a matter of fact, now that you bring it up, the additive was specifically 3 parts carbon, 5 parts hydrogen, 1 part nitrogen, and 3 parts oxygen.
Which, of course, is?
The nitroglycerin.
The results were?
Negative.
And?
Noisy.
Julius Kelp, by the way, is the model for Professor Frank in The Simpsons. They actually did an episode together once. Anyway, Jerry Lewis went on to do talk shows. He did a great take in Scorsese's The King of Comedy. Also did a great take in Wise Guy. Bought Louis B. Mayer's estate in Bel Air for only $500,000, for which he paid cash. He and his wife raised their 6 kids there, one of whom was Gary Lewis of Gary Lewis and the Playboys and This Diamond Ring fame. Frank was divorced after 36 years, and he wasn't always the best father. Listen to the Gary Lewis song Everybody Loves a Clown. It's really about his father. Jerry was a spokesman for muscular dystrophy, and for decades he was a staple on Labor Day television. He was getting difficult off camera, and the Muscular Dystrophy Association got rid of him sort of unceremoniously in 2011. Can't say they treated him that well. Here's his last show. His kids here don't refer to his family, but his Muscular Dystrophy Association kids.
I know the feeling of all my kids tonight. They are so lucky to have you. I'm so lucky to have you. I am so overcome by what we have done. Because I guess in the back of my mind and my heart, if we struck out, I wouldn't know how to look at my kids. What did I do wrong? Walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You will never walk alone. Thank you. Good night.
Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps. Well, in closing, all I can say is the French love Jerry Lewis. A lot of Americans love Jerry Lewis. He was very popular once upon a time. He did great charity work. He does have certain undeniable talents. But I'm sort of in the Don Rickles school on Jerry.
Jerry, you annoyed me.
I didn't give Jerry a full 15 minutes, so we'll close with 2. He had one top 10 hit in 1956. He and Judy Garland were both in Vegas. Judy was sick. She couldn't sing this song, so he sang it, recorded it, and it went to number 10 on the charts. Of course, he does a little over-the-top Jolson imitation of Rockabye Your Baby.
A million baby kisses are gonna deliver the minute that you sing the Swanee River. Rockabye, your rockabye baby, with a Dixie melody.
But as a final tribute to Jerry, I'm going to play the song he did a pantomime to in the 1963 movie Who's Minding the Store. It's the great Leroy Anderson song, The Typewriter.